should get that information. Setting up. Okay, we're going.
It's working.
Yeah.
What a
Done
good sign.
redirecting. Yeah. And we are streaming. If we are live, welcome. We're just getting set up. This is the pre-meeting. Yeah, we're live. So this is
I
our
guess we're going to have
pre-show.
to keep our act together, John. You know,
I
this is.
know, I know. Um, this is pre-meeting, pre-show. Everybody who's waiting or are watching, thank you for being here. We're going to be with you in a second. So we are good. And we're 4 minutes ahead of time.
And now lets me decide. What do you think of my white balance, John?
It looks, uh, yeah, there you are, blue.
Do I look a little too blue?
Well, no, you look great.
I could change it. That's too blue. I could be that. That's me adjusting it, and this is the auto. Auto's probably good enough.
Yep. So we're 3 minutes out, and people on YouTube can see, and we're recording to YouTube with this. And I could put up a start down counter if I wanted to, but I think I'll just let it go this way.
Where are the shadows coming from? The shadows look okay.
We are 2 minutes out, going to one. Okay. John, are you ready?
As ready as I can be, I'm going to go check and see if we're in the Squares TV lab.
Okay. And I am going to start the show. We are on. And Discord has the link. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Squares TV App Lab. And before we get going, just letting you know, I'm John During, and Michael's going to come up later, and John Idelson and I are going to carry the mail a little bit here. And there we are. We are on Squares TV App Lab number 68, where we talk about Video Pencil, Shoot, and CueCam Presenter. And this lab we stream into after hours and we go out live on YouTube. I'm John During, and I'm a volunteer hallucinator. And I picked that because we're going to do some hallucination today, but coming up with ideas has been really a lot of fun working with Michael. And we're going to get started today with Michael's updates. And he's flying, and he'll tell you more about new things that are coming on. So before we jump into anything, Michael in a plane, here he comes.
Hey, I'm on a plane, so I can't even dial in today, but I did send John this CueCam presentation, including this B-roll. So I've got some video pencil updates. I've been doing some things to video pencil this week, which you should have if you're on test flight. So first up, I refined the Spotlight UI. So here's the iPad. I don't know why that's slow to appear. I know John mentioned that as well. I do want to fix that. I think it's probably something quite straightforward. But anyway, so here's the new Spotlight. So we tap on this and we draw, and we can draw. So it's just, you don't have to sort of keep switching between the thing. Tap on it again, clears it, draw. I don't know why that.
Oops. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead, way ahead. Let me get back to what we want to do, which is, I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm on a plane, so I can't even dial in.
It will go into the background
presentation, including this B-roll. So I tap on it again, clears it, draw. I don't know why that froze then. Let's not talk about that too much. If you press and hold on here, you get more options. So you can darken all, press and hold, you can sort of change how dark it goes, lighter and darker. And you can also, if you don't like that behavior where it like clears everything every time you press Spotlight, I think that's the best UX for it. I have got a little menu down here. You can say just clear the Spotlight. You can clear your current drawing of Spotlight, or you can just use it as a darken all button. So if you go darken all, now when you press that, like let's just clear that out, press it once, and now it's just going to be dark, and you can start drawing. And then yeah, so that's a different way of doing it. But I like clear drawing in Spotlight because then when I tap it, I can say, hey, this is it, and then I can draw a house or a mushroom, and we can have a good time, and then just clear, go to the next thing. I also had an issue with the NDI source aspect ratio. So Neil said I typically stream at 2880 by 1440, which is a 2:1 aspect ratio in eCam. When I use this resolution for Video Pencil, the Video Pencil screen from eCam is on the iPad is squashed, which makes it difficult to draw accurately. And yeah, so I sort of assumed 1080p and I didn't even realize you could stream at different sizes in eCam, or that people were doing that. So I have made it, when it brings in the video feed now into Video Pencil, it will respect the aspect ratio that it comes in at, and so it won't stretch it. So whereas before you'd have it would take the NDI and it would just like stretch it, so you'd end up being like tall like that. Now it just sort of like, if it's wider, it goes like that. If it's taller, it goes like that. And that means the output is still that. So you just have to like line that up. But it's pretty obvious when it's lined up, because if it's working, you just see one line. If it's not working, you're going to see two lines. And like if you draw them, they might get sort of further apart as you get down the screen. But the nice thing about this, so just basically try and match the width or the height, and you should get that working. I didn't want to kind of go too far with making it. I didn't want to sort of have a load of. I didn't want to try and make it match the output size. That was a bit scary. I didn't know what side effects that would cause, so I just made it respect the input and sort of go from there, really. And while I was in there, I did notice that the NDI feed was quite choppy. I'm just noticing on the main video feed as well. So I've tinkered with the NDI feed. So because what you'd get is, so usually your video frames, so at 30 times a second, you want a video frame. The way NDI was, the way it was doing it, it was just sort of like, if it gets a load here, you're just going to see that one. If it sort of, there might be sort of like spread out a bit and a bit choppy. So the way to deal with that is to sort of stick the frames into a buffer and then sort of like put them evenly sort of through time. And then we just keep sort of like filling that buffer with frames, so that we can just like send them evenly instead of kind of having that choppiness. So the longer the buffer, the smoother the feed will be. But sometimes I think like a choppier but less laggy feed is actually better, because you can see the drawing faster, even though it might not be smooth. And I feel like what you're looking at on the iPad screen, it doesn't need to be smooth necessarily. It just needs to show you like what you're drawing on. And that's not, hopefully you're not moving around so fast that that's going to be changing too much. But yeah, I've given you, this isn't like me to put loads of config settings in things, but it's NDI, which is just, it's sort of my hand is forced sometimes. So you can set that frame buffer size. So the bigger that is, and it tells you here, the smoother it will be. But if you just set that to 1, then it will just kind of go back to the old behavior. And then you just sort of have to tell it what frame rate you're streaming at as well. So if you were at, because it just like grabs them at a certain fixed frame rate. So if you are streaming at 60 frames a second or 24, then just select those and let me know if the one you're using isn't on there, and I'll just add it in. But I was thinking, what do people stream at? I don't know. But yeah, so that's in there. I don't know. I just noticed it. And after all the work I've done on CueCam, I'm really noticing choppy video now. And I think I want to try. I think I can get. I think at some point I will put in a day or two to get Video Pencil like properly instantaneous real-time video. I don't think there's any reason. Like the Apple screen sharing stuff, it's just instant, and there's no reason it shouldn't be instant. So. But anyway, I was gonna just come in with something else before I let the Johns talk about the interesting stuff. I just wanted to say, like, people are always saying that I move quick, but sometimes it feels like the opposite. And I want to talk about why programming is annoying sometimes. So I was working on Video Pencil and the new Spotlight feature, and it was like nearly ready. You could tap and it gave good feedback. So we had the little animation there. I think that's quite cool. Tap for Spotlight, tap again for options, right? That was how it worked. So tap stop, and then it springs back once you're done, and you can use the selected pen. And then I added a menu with more options, right? And it looked like this. And you could slide the slider, and you could, sort of like darken all was there. There's a clear button there, right? So you've got all that stuff. But this meant there wasn't a way to darken the whole background without sort of first opening it and then tapping again for the menu and then doing the stuff. And there wasn't a way to, if you did have the spotlight up, there wasn't a way to adjust the opacity of the background. If it was clearing the spotlight when you tap the button, there wasn't a way to change the opacity. So I tried to, I thought, well, we want a long press gesture, like just press and hold, and that brings up the menu. But like I tried adding, so this is the code, like just here's a button. Here, should we spotlight it? Spotlight it. So you got, this is what I tried adding, which didn't work. And because like this, the way buttons work, it just wasn't happening. I tried all sorts of combinations of simultaneous gesture recognizer or putting it inside the label, but nothing worked. And I'd see an error message in the console, but no information was available on Google or GPT. So the next day I decided to try something different with so context menu is something you can add to a button, which triggers with a long press. And so, okay, cool. So I'll use that. It has this nice animation too. So if you saw that, like you press and hold, and it just sort of pops up. And that was just like, instead of putting on tap gesture recognizer, just put context menu, put my stuff in there, all good. I mean, we don't have a slider anymore. We've got this plus minus button, but okay. But now I want to handle a single tap once the slider is open. I get the old style of menu. So it's like the slider. So this is exactly the same code, but it's rendering completely differently. I want it to be the same. But there's no way to style them the same. I can't find a way to control the menu styling. I can't find a thing to embed the controls in when I'm showing it the second way that I just showed you that will make it look the same. And if I try sticking it in a form, then it would just disappear, and it ignores all of that sizing info, which I just want to be automatic. So now, like, I had to, so this again, like, I'm just thinking some more, like, what can I do? Okay, so if we're waiting for Spotlight, that means it's ready for you to draw the shape. Then instead of the button, we show a menu with this, and it's got the same. So the Spotlight, the label is the button, and now I'm doing actually a different thing. So we've got a context menu if we're not waiting, and if we are waiting, now it turns into a menu so that you can single tap it once it's open. But like, I was worried this would mess up the slide out animation when switching the buttons, but it was actually okay. But that would have been another problem. But then here's what that looked like. And so just see if you can spot the problems with this. We've got, here it is when you long press, and then once it's open, well, this is the long press, but if we open it first and then tap on it, can you see what's going wrong? Well, I'll show you. Like, when you do it with the tap after pressing, it's in the opposite order. Why is it in the opposite order? So again, like, it's like, why are you making me? And then this was really hard to figure out as well. And then eventually I did actually figure this. Oh, it's does it, if it's a menu, then it does it nearest to the thing. And also, like, this text here, like, why is it? I can't change the size of that text. So you just go like, I just want to quickly add a thing, and then you end up spending 4 hours just going, what? We're just fighting with it. So this is the sort of thing, yeah, that turns a 5-minute job into a 3-hour wasted morning, and having to either sort of have a weird compromise or throw away most of the benefits of what Apple gives you. And like, once there's not that much to it, but there's not that much documentation either, and it's really hard to know what to search for. So I just wanted to talk to you about, I think things could be coming so much quicker if Apple's frameworks were open source. If that were the case, I would never have to deal with this problem, because I would just be able to see, I would be able to jump into the code, I would be able to see what it does. I would be able to just change just enough, or I would know how to work with it. If I didn't want to replace it, like, I would know exactly what to do. But unfortunately, when there's no documentation or on how to change any of the styling, or very little on Stack Overflow or ChatGPT, like, what am I supposed to do? I just end up wasting a sunny Friday morning when I could have been holding my baby instead. So I just wanted to moan. So that's enough moaning. They're going to talk to you about some more interesting stuff. But I just, that was just something that was winding me up this week. So I hope you appreciate the thing that doesn't look like much actually ended up taking quite a lot of time. But back over to the Johns with what they're going to talk about. Cheers.
John, we're not hearing your audio. But this is the other John. And
I put myself on mute
there you go.
because I
It's
didn't
such
want.
fun listening to Michael give his, process. I feel like I'm getting a class in software design as he goes through all the steps and things that he was doing to, just make a simple change to the program. And what I really like about his approach to solving these problems are he's trying to solve a human problem and working backwards, where I've dealt with programmers who find a fun little thing to do and then figure out where to stick it into their code. The whole discussion, his little frustration with my new granddaughter, I could see when he said, he could have been holding his son rather than spending 3 hours coding. But we're appreciative of the time he spends coding for all the improvements he's making to CueCam Presenter.
Well, and the one-man band nature is, I've just never seen it before. That would be a team of people iterating, discussing, arguing, trying to get funding, figuring out what is a top level bit, how's it going to look, when in reality, the benefits of trying many things and that works this way, that works that way. No, it doesn't. And does it work well online? Does it work well in the new functionality of all the tools that we have? This
Well,
is something
it's fun
he's
when
really playing with.
when you don't need the whole crew. The Mythical Man month, you put more programmers on a problem, and it only takes longer. And
Yes.
but I think that's this sort of philosophy of how he's approaching designing this is really influencing how he expects people to use this tool. He's trying to make so that an individual could do all the steps or the majority of the steps without needing to go to a graphic artist to create this overlays, without needing to have an audio engineer to do the audio work. He's practicing his modeling of being the one-man band, although one-man band's not completely safe, because when you look at all the hooks and features and stuff that's buried within the Apple garden, there's a lot of people behind making those things work as smoothly as they do.
Thousands of people. Yeah, there's something about not a it's like um, an artist, a developer, and an entrepreneur all in one. And you're sitting on top of thousands of, ecosystem who've built this platform. So to me, it's a great ride to suddenly be able to say what we're doing now. I've dreamed of it for years. And the idea I could be talking to somebody I know about something we're interested in. And it's not a performance as much as a connection. And that authenticity is what I sense in Michael as being high level. And so building all the tools underneath it such that normal people can have normal conversations increases the value of the whole system. And yeah, I'm going through a lot of things right now with we've got people in the chat saying, "Yep, you're live." And I'm saying, "Thank you, Stefan. I don't know how to put up the little thing that Michael does." Or, people with questions and whatnot. If we don't get to them, um, bear with us. But John and I are going to talk a little bit about storytelling, which is absolutely not technical. Um, Yet, I thought a great place to start with this whole thing is this idea that you've got a blank page, you've got a blank script, and let me just take over the whole screen for a second, John, and I'll get you on in a second.
Not a problem.
And
I'm standing by.
yeah, and I'm just using Zoom to spotlight the two of us or one of us. And this idea that at the end of this process, I ended up with a storyboard. That's that's the bottom line. I'm giving you the punchline. You start with a blank sheet, you end up with a storyboard. And how do you make that happen? And this thing from Plato, there's a whole bunch of others, the longest journey comes with a single step, that sort of thing. CueCam is a great first step in organizing thinking, in organizing, revealing things that you didn't consider up front that actually are important because you're making a presentation and you have tools that help you do it. So, with that, John, I would love to have you talk a little bit about the way storyboards have lived their importance and processes.
Okay, thank you, John. Yeah, when you told me you were spending this week playing with storyboarding for creating a CueCam presenter, it made me think of my old days as a starting professor when I was teaching media production, video production. And one of the teaching aids I used was a 60-second television commercial. It was on film. But we were able to get all the paperwork from the original letter that the ad agency got from the company who wanted to make the commercial with some rough ideas, and how it went from that written letter to a storyboard, which then got approval within the agency and then worked its way to the client. And then once the storyboard was approved, how that became the shooting sheet, the scheduling sheet, and all those things. So storyboards have been around for quite a while in terms of a representation of a film sequence. And there's probably not any Star Wars fan who hasn't, looked back and seen a YouTube or read something about some of the original storyboards from a Star Wars film and what the final thing looked like. What struck me is in my classes on instructional design and creating training materials, we also used a form of storyboard that had multiple columns. What was the visual going to be? What was the script going to be? And how was that connecting to the learning objectives or to what we wanted the student to have? So I think the process of storyboarding has been used for training materials for epic films. And what you were doing this last week was sort of exploring the process of storyboarding that when I started was index cards put on a bulletin board with horrible stick figures, or then possibly going out to a location and shooting film, printing those pictures, and having those pictures be the images we paste around, to what you were doing this last week, trying to use CueCam as a storyboarding tool.
Well, and let me get us both up here for a second. And not just CueCam. I mean, inside CueCam are connections with OpenAI's APIs. And so this idea, and I've been watching all the generative AI world has just exploded. And Michael's right there, putting it into the ability within cards to ask to generate how many cards do you want? And I can walk you through this little exercise I did, and then we can talk about it. Does that make sense?
Love to see what you've been doing, John.
Okay, hang on, and I'll get you out of there. And I should be able to come up to this one. So I basically went to Michael's tool and said, give me a picture that I can use in a storyboard. And it gave me this. And it gave me this whole story that the use of color and composition in images can greatly enhance a storytelling experience. Colors evoke emotions, set tone. Composition guides the eye and creates a sense of balance. So consider these elements when creating a story. So that got me to thinking, why don't I create a story and a storyboard when I was only asking about an image and a story? So we actually have the ability, and let's see if I get to show you my screen here. Oh no, we have this ability. I'm going to share it. We have this ability in CueCam to generate, and I'm going to make it so that she is not showing. Let me see. Get rid of her. There we are. So what I was doing was basically going to the bottom here. There's this generate tool. And this generate tool, which is right there, that generate tool lets me create a story. Dot, dot, dot. You decide. And you decide how many cards. I asked for 5. And it's once those stories are going to get laid out as you see behind me, just like that. But then I'm going to say on each of those, create an image prompt. So I'm going to read a story element, and I'm going to have a little spot that I can say, generate an image. And that's what I did. And I'm not going to actually generate anything. I'm going to go through my story. So basically, this story is a powerful way to convey information, connect to an audience that can be used in various forms, such as books, movies, presentations. A good story should have a clear beginning, middle, and end. And they gave me this shot. And I looked at that shot and I go, oh man, there's so much more than a picture there. There's character, there's drama, there's emotion. So I went on and said, give me a storyboard about that picture. And this is what it gave me. And what's really amazing in all of this is that storyboard is telling me a sequence from a little girl growing to a woman. There's magic and dragons. And for me, I was drawn in. I want to clear that. There we go. And so this visual way to plan out a story, that's the storyboard, creates a sequence of images that represent key moments. These images can be drawn, photographed, created digitally. They help organize ideas and ensure a cohesive flow of the story. And this, I just started saying, well, where do I go next? And the next was to generate an image in that story. And there's that character and there's that dragon. It's important to consider the tone and mood. The images should reflect emotions and atmosphere. Happy, sad, humorous. Let me get some water. Excuse me. I think I'm back. And this creates an immersive experience. But I was taken away by this picture that why is she there? If I was there in that situation, I'd run. I'd be out of there. What is making that character stand up to the dragon? I know it's all fictitious, but the depths at which AI is taking me into what I started with as a very innocent exploration made me then say, let's generate something. What is it that's making her so powerful? And I asked AI to help, and they gave me this symbolism. A metaphor can change and add depth and meaning to a story. These elements can help to convey a deeper message, also make the story more visually interesting. However, it's important to use them sparingly. And I looked at, oh, the dragon's going to see this pendant. There's a story behind it. And this morning I was waking up thinking, yeah, a dragon lord created it for this lady and gave it to her when she was a little child. And, you know, you can go on and on. So that really is my dive, because what I got out of this was a story and more importantly, I got a storyboard. This whole thing with all the detail was generated as I was developing this little element for this sequence. So with that, John, I'm going to ask you to join me again and let's talk about what we just looked at.
Well, that was fun, John. I don't think the Writers Guild is going to be worried about you winning the next Oscar for your story, but it is fun that I think back to when I was doing storyboarding. I have no artistic talent. That goes along with my singing talent. My singing talent is I could carry a tune if it's in a bag, and my drawing talent is even worse. So even in team meetings when we were doing storyboards, I'd be doing stick figures. I had to have an image translator. I would draw what I thought was going to be an image in a storyboard, and somebody in there who had greater talent would say, "I think, John, what you're trying to draw is this, that, or the other." So what I see you doing with your little fun story about the dragon and the woman and having AI generating images, the AI tool, the ability on any card within a CueCam Presenter sequence, if the story there were the 5 card sequence that you did were the steps in repairing a automobile carburetor, then you would go to that card and you could, let AI talk about a particular part of the caliber. I can't even speak about cars. I should talk about something I know something about. And what I see, just as Michael showed us today, how he was looking at programming and what he wanted the image to do or the NDI film, video, the frame rate was, solving problems. And the ability when I'm arranging my cards for the sequence of the content and trying to decide what are the images that we need to have or the photos that we need to do, the ability to just be able to say, I need a picture does this. I need a picture of the overhead view of an engine block showing where the carburetor is. And it turns out AI can generate those pretty well. Sometimes they hallucinate a little bit and you wonder what that was, what the AI was thinking. But when I think about other times when I was doing training like this, and I wasn't drawing the images, we were going out into the field and taking pictures, and we had to get the pictures from a number of angles, and we were essentially doing pre-production. So I'm seeing CueCam Presenter being a handy tool for doing that pre-planning and doing it in a way that is all integrated in a simple tool that is easy to use. I used to do the slide sorter in Microsoft. I had a separate graphics program. It was actually a graphics program that did generate simple images. I would use Flickr to get the photos, but that all took time away from the process of, what am I saying now? What am I saying next? What should the image be? So I'm looking to workflow that you just use to create your creative story as the workflow is going to be much easier because I'm not jumping in and out of a particular program or multiple programs. I'm just using the tool for the planning. And once it's done, you can use the same tool for the presentation.
Well, John, the thing is, you're speaking, we can't think that AI is standing still. And what I'm picking up is increasingly organizations, nations, organizations of all sizes, they're building their own AIs. And that means confidential information. It means trade secrets. All those things that are inside an organization are going to be put into that organization's models. They're going to train their models based on very powerful data or information. What we're playing with today is for fun. We're shooting with blanks, but the methods that we're talking about and what you're describing that have a heritage show what you can do when you have live bullets. So we might as well be firing blanks for a while and get to know how to use these very powerful tools that are on our desktops. And if we don't share them, we're not making good use of them.
Well, I'm not ready to get into the AI talk because everything has the word AI in front of it. But I, I'm not concerned where AI is taking us. I'm enjoying playing with it, but my greater fear is natural and ignorance rather than artificial intelligence. And a lot of the artificial models come from our ignorance. But I think,
That's, I mean, jumping in on that. A lot of, I think, where Michael's coming from, and obviously you and I, is the human side has to be in charge. How does the human side maintain its um, hand on the lever, so to speak? And what we're doing now, I think I would submit, is a step in that direction. And it's how we communicate to each other that generates how we publish things. In my world, books, you know,
yeah,
we're
you're
making
back
it
in the
public.
book publishing world.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
making it public
But what,
and might as well. And then we can see what we get back.
well, again, when you had to do a lot of different things, use different programs at more time, you couldn't focus on the problem you're trying to solve. You had to deal with dealing with the tool. And as we can automate more things, and I think of the earliest tools, the lever, it made it easier to lift heavy things. There were lots of physical tools that we've built to, increase our power and our strength. I think now we're beginning to see tools that it's not like a lever where you're lifting heavier pounds, but it's where you're lifting heavier thoughts. You're able to use our cycles in our brain for solving the problem that we want to solve.
Well,
And
you
that's something
remember
you could
that
train.
that pyramid of, you've got data, turns into information, turns into knowledge, turns into wisdom. That pyramid, um, technically, we know how to manage data and we know how to manage information. The internet has turned us into the information age. And really, where this whole thing is moving, they're saying the next step is intelligence. And we're moving into storing intelligence, gathering intelligence, sharing intelligence. And, look at the number of tools that we have to deal with in order to do that. And we've just boiled that down, even today, into you and I working on Zoom, working on CueCam, using AI. Yes, I need to have some lights. I need to have a mic. I need to have a camera, but I'm in my house. That's amazing. And we didn't have to go to an office and have a team of people do this for us. We're doing it ourselves.
Well, the sort of play I'm going to do, like you did this storyboard with a dramatic theme. One of my favorite assignments that I had when I was teaching television production is the students were to do a 1 minute news story without any words, without any numbers, without any symbols. So they had to take a national news story and create a 1 minute sequence, and then that was produced in class. They also had to go through the whole process from they picked actually some of the assignments I took the news story. We had a AP feed that we were able to give our students example of what a news story would look like, and they would randomly draw a story. So they had to figure out how they were going to tell that story without a single word, without a single number, without a symbol. And it made them really think about visualization. They had to think about what images conveyed, what images would convey numbers, what images would have be able to show motion over time. But they had to totally focus on their story without saying a single word. Then after they created their story, we produced it in the studio. Then I was teaching 2 sessions of the course. So we would play the video to the students who didn't know the story, didn't know anything, and see if it worked. And that session then took those stories that had no words, symbols, or numbers and wrote the scripts for them. And I know what activities the students went through, what they did in terms of storyboarding, drawing, looking up for cultural links that they could do, color associations. I wonder what their stories would have looked like if they'd had a storyboarding tool like this right now, where they could have just asked for an image. Could have tried to come up with other ways of doing it. So I still have some of those projects because they were some of the most fun projects I had students do, because it really was pushing the envelope for them. And to this day, I still have some of my former students who are in the industry saying they give that assignment to their colleagues when they're trying to solve problems. And so I'm going to see what the CueCam Presenter does with some of those stories.
Yeah, there is a real truism that the way to solve a problem is to change where you're standing. And that's what you do when you ask somebody to build what you did, is it forces those students to think in a new way, see something, oh, I can't use the words, I have to use a picture. And for me, I felt that way with generating these images. They took me into a place I wasn't expecting, and I wasn't prepared to go. Um, and sure, it's hallucination, and I'm a volunteer hallucinator. But the reality is that through that process, I could see the layers of the onion being unpeeled. That, oh, this isn't just an image of a lake or of a dragon. There's so much underneath it that it makes me appreciate what I see on TV or I see in the movie theater.
Well, going back to Michael's Open, we're about a month into the release of version 2.0,
Yeah.
and it's been fun to follow on Discord, both the joys of people saying, "Hey, I really like what you did," and then even just between version 1 and version 2, everyone goes, "Well, I like the way you did before," because I was used to it. And I think this is still going to be evolving, and I'm excited that version 2.0 is out and more people are using it, because that, I think, is going to create even more energy. And particularly some of the solutions that Michael talked about today in his 11-minute overview, we're really getting into little details about how a particular part of the program works. Like the NDI into the video pencil. And I hadn't thought about the different resolutions and vertical and different ratios. And that's probably my ignorance of the good old days where everything was a portrait. Everything was 525 lines of television, what we refer to NTSC, never the same color twice. So, and being old school, never shoot with your video camera vertically. You just don't do that. And of course now, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, who knows what we're going to be doing. And the software has to be able to accommodate those different resolutions, those different ways that creative people and trainers and producers are trying to integrate this into multimedia presentations.
There's no doubt about it. And I've been watching Google's this week is doing their marketing reveal, and including, and Microsoft's doing theirs, but on Google's, YouTube is their big moneymaker. And YouTube ads are in the audience as you're talking to ad executives about how you can use AI to say, upload a picture of the sofa you're selling. Now, what do you want it to be in? Do you want it to be at a bar? Do you want it to be in an office? Do you want it to be in your house? and they'll create the scene around it and create a little walkthrough. Here's a sneaker, put it on the beach, do a 3D model around it. It's we're going to see a lot of this. It's fun, but it's great for us to be able to communicate this way as well. And I'm having fun with you because all that history and all your interest in where it is going forward sort of marry with sort of my ignorance but enthusiasm. So I'm happy to pair up.
There's a value in old college professors.
Yeah,
The more
absolutely.
things change, the more they stay the same. I've been following the announcements from Apple and their new iPads. I've been following the announcements from Microsoft and their new Surface computers. Acer has some coming out. You talked about the Google. Uh, it amazes me what things we're dealing with now, particularly speed, because when I had a 2 megahertz computer and I doubled it to 4, I thought I'd really, gone over
Yeah.
the hill. But
Boy,
as
it's
much as
it's
things have
amazing.
changed, whenever there's a new announcement, somehow it's going to cost me $2,000.
Yeah,
Uh,
everything's a
that's what,
pocketbook.
my wife says, are you going to get a new iPad or a new computer after seeing these things? I said, when I save up $2,000.
That's
And I
right.
remember saying the same thing, 30 years ago.
Yeah, there's a certain price point and they know it. But that's for the consumer. At the same time, you've got, Jensen Huang at NVIDIA sitting down with Michael Dell and the ServiceNow guy, and they're talking about enterprise. And so scale that thing up instead of having a laptop that's ounces, talking about a 70-pound processor, that is generating stuff so people can build their own models. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And to be able to sit here and sort of ride with a herd with you is a lot of fun to do.
Well, it is fun. And the whole idea of the topic we talked about, storyboarding, because that's a tool that creative people have been using for a very long time. Precursor to that was stage blocking in the theater before the film industry really adopted it. But I go back to in the what had been the 70s when we were doing some of the first timeshare. So computers were big, heavy metal, and you remotely went into it. And then, of course, we had the revolution where the computers no longer in the cloud, but it's on your desktop, or it's at least in your facility. And then it got smaller and smaller, and the computer's totally in your phone or on your wrist. And now we're going back to the cloud. Things do go in cycles, and it's fun to be part of that ride. And I want to thank you, John, for inviting me to chat with you today, and thank Michael for trusting us to talk about what he's doing while he's flying in the air. And literally, that's the ultimate cloud computing. I'll have to tell him that that's the flight with his family to visit should be fun. And we'll look forward to seeing you and Michael next week.
Yep. And so I'm going to bring this frivolity to a close.
Well, we have to have Michael's play out music, right?
Oh,
That it's not
yeah.
going to be my
So
music.
no, we're now it's time for comments and questions. But given that I can see a chat and it's like too many things, we're just going to pass on that.
Well,
And
let's hold on, John. Let's
yeah,
let me take a quick look.
yeah, I took a
We have
look.
Hi from over the pond. Cyprian's having some challenges, tech support. Yeah, I think we've either answered every question or generated so many questions they can't even write them down.
Well, and it's really fun to be able to get so wrapped up you forget to look. So I just want to let people know that Michael is going to be with us next week. But if he's sleeping or he's in Milan or whatever, the ways to get a hold of him are Squares TV/Discord or his email, Michael at Squares TV. And with that, he's given us some music to go out with.
Thank you, John. You have a great rest of the week.
And he said, I think it would have turned out better if I was better at painting. So a little bit of like what we're talking about. So many different tools, and yet you can't be the master of all of them. You just go with what you can do.
I would like to keep you satisfied. Celebrate the magic of our time. Why go round in circles when you could be fine? Some things happen in the silence. Make you stop and think about your life. You couldn't see the pattern there for all the lines. This plane goes down, be in charge, shaking up the bottom. It's been hard. I never knew that you could be so charming. You'll never be afraid. Forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it. Take the pain away. But what about the good times, the good times, good times? You'll never be afraid. Forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it. Take that pain away. But what about the good times, the good times, good times? What you and I want is a bed of moonlight where we fix the floors to see these problems we have until forever. I like to take you for a cup of tea. I like to take you out to see the breeze. No matter what you say, your secrets see with me. You'll never be afraid. Forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it. Take that pain away. What about the good times, the good times, the good times? You'll never be afraid. Forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it. Take that pain away. But what about the good times, the good times, the good times?